So welcome back. Yes, we are doing a part 2. Letting in the Jungle, part 2. The charcoal burners looked round cautiously and thanked their stars they had not. But they had no doubt that so brave a man as Buldeo would find him if anyone could. The sun was getting rather low, and they had an idea that they would push on to Buldeo's village and see the wicked witch. Buldeo said that, though it was his duty to kill the devil child, he could not think of letting a party of unarmed men go through the jungle, which might reveal the wolf demon at any minute without his escort. He therefore would accompany them, and if the sorcerer's child appeared, well, he would show them how the best hunter in Seoni dealt with such things. The Brahmin, he said, had given him a charm against the creature that made everything perfectly safe. What says he? What says he? What says he? The wolves repeated every few minutes, and Mowgli translated until he came to the witch part of the story, which was a little beyond him, and then he said that the man and woman who had been so kind to him were trapped. Do men trap men? Said Gray Brother. So he says, I cannot understand the talk. They are all mad together. What have Messua and her man to do with me that they should be put in a trap? And what is all this talk about the red flower? I must look to this. Whatever they would do to Messua, they will not do to Buldeo, until Buldeo returns. And so Mowgli thought hard, with his fingers playing round the haft of his skinning knife, while Buldeo and the charcoal burners went off very valiantly in single file. I go hot-foot back to the man pack, Mowgli said at last. Mowgli. I think I said that with a B. Mowgli said at last. And those, said Gray Brother, looking hungrily after the brown backs of the charcoal burners. Sing them home, said Mowgli with a grin. I do not wish them to be at the village gate till it is dark. Can ye hold them? Gray Brother bared his white teeth in contempt. We can head them round and round in circles like tethered goats, if I know man. That I do not need. Sing to them a little, lest they be lonely on the road. And, Gray Brother, the song need not be of the sweetest. Go with them, Bagheera, and help make that song. When night is laid down, meet me by the village. Gray Brother knows the place. It is no light hunting to track for a man-cub. When shall I sleep? Said Bagheera, yawning, though his eyes showed he was delighted with the amusement. Me to sing to naked men. But let us try. He lowered his head so that the sound would travel, and cried a long, long good hunting, a midnight call in the afternoon, which was quite awful enough to begin with. Mowgli heard it rumble and rise and fall, and die off in a creepy sort of whine behind him, and laughed to himself as he ran through the jungle. He could see the charcoal burners huddled in a knot, old Buldeo's gun barrel waving like a banana leaf to every point of the compass at once. Then Gray Brother gave the Yalla-hi! Yalla-ha! call for the buck driving, when the pack drives the Nilgahi, the big blue cow, before them. And it seemed to come from the very ends of the earth, nearer and nearer and nearer, till it ended in a shriek snapped off short. The other three answered, till even Mowgli could have vowed that the full pack was in full cry. And then they all broke into the magnificent morning song of the jungle, with every turn and flourish and grace note that a deep-mouthed wolf of the pack knows. This is a rough rendering of the song, but you must imagine what it sounds like when it breaks the afternoon hush of the jungle. Wish me luck. One moment past our bodies cast no shadow on the plain. Now clear and black they stride our track and we run home again. In morning hush each rock and bush stands hard and high and raw. Then give the call, good rest to all that keep the jungle law. Now horn and pelt our peoples melt in covert to abide. Now crouch and still to cave and hill our jungle barons glide. Now stark and plain man's oxen strain that draw the new yoke plough. Now stripped and dread the dawn is red above the lit talao. Ho go to lair the sun's aflare behind the breathing grass, and creaking through the young bamboo the warning whispers pass. By day made strange the woods we range, with blinking eyes we scan, while down the skies the wild duck cries, the day to man. The dew is dried that drenched our hide, or washed about our way, and where we drink the puddled bank is crisping into clay. The trader dark gives up each mark of stretched or hooded claw, then hear the call, good rest to all that keep the jungle law. I want all royalties. But no translation gave the effect of it, or the yelping scorn the four threw into every word of it, as they heard the trees crash when the men hastily climbed up into the branches, and Buldeo began repeating incantations and charms. Then they laid down and slept, for like all who live by their own exertions, they were of a methodical cast of mind, and no one can work well without sleep. Meantime, Mowgli was putting the miles behind him, 9 to the hour, swinging on, delighted to find himself so fit after all his cramped months among men. The one idea in his head was to get Messua and her husband out of the trap, whatever it was, for he had a natural mistrust of traps. Later on, he promised himself he would begin to pay his debts to the village at large. It was at twilight when he saw the well-remembered grazing grounds, and the dock tree where Grey Brother had waited for him on the morning that he killed Shere Khan. Angry as he was at the whole breed and community of man, something jumped up in his throat and made him catch his breath when he looked at the village roofs. He noticed that everyone had come in from the fields unusually early, and that instead of getting to their evening cooking, they gathered in a crowd under the village tree and chattered and shouted. Men must always be making traps for men, or they are not content, said Mowgli. 2 nights ago it was Mowgli, but that night seems many rains old. Tonight it is Messua and her man. Tomorrow, and for very many nights after, it will be Mowgli's turn again. He crept along outside the wall till he came to Messua's hut and looked through the window into the room. There lay Messua, gagged and bound hand and foot, breathing hard and groaning. Her husband was tied to the gaily painted bedstead. The door of the hut that opened into the street was shut fast, and 3 or 4 people were sitting with their backs to it. Mowgli knew the manners and customs of the villagers very fairly. He argued that so long as they could eat and talk and smoke, they would not do anything else. But as soon as they had fed, they would begin to be dangerous. Buldeo would be coming in before long, and if his escort had done its duty, Buldeo would have a very interesting tale to tell. So he went in through the window, and, stooping over the man and the woman, cut their thongs, pulling out the gags, and looked round the hut for some milk. Mesua was half wild with pain and fear. She had been beaten and stoned all morning, and Mowgli put his hand over her mouth just in time to stop a scream. Her husband was only bewildered and angry, and sat picking dust and things out of his torn beard. I knew he would come, Mesua sobbed at last. Now do I know that he is my son. And she caught Mowgli to her heart. Up to that time, Mowgli had been perfectly steady. But here he began to tremble all over, and that surprised him immensely. Why are these thongs? Why have they tied thee? He asked after a pause. To be put to the death for making a son of thee. What else? Said the man sullenly. Look, I bleed. Mesua said nothing, but it was at her wounds that Mowgli looked, and they heard him grit his teeth when he saw the blood. Whose work is this? Said he. There is a price to pay. The work of all the village. I was too rich. I had too many cattle. Therefore she and I are witches, because we gave thee shelter. I do not understand. Let Mesua tell the tale. I gave thee milk, Nathu. Dost thou remember? Mesua said timidly. Because thou wast my son, whom the tiger took, and because I loved thee very dearly. They said that I was thy mother, and the mother of a devil, and therefore worthy of death. And what is a devil? Said Mowgli. Death I have seen. The man looked up gloomily under his eyebrows, but Mesua laughed. See, she said to her husband, I knew, I said that he was no sorcerer. He is my son, my son. Son or sorcerer, what good will that do us? The man answered. We be as dead already. Yonder is the road through the jungle, Mowgli pointed through the window. Your hands and feet are free. Go now. We do not know the jungle, my son, as thou knowest, Mesua began. I do not think that I could walk far. And the men and women would be put upon our backs and drag us here again, said the husband. Said Mowgli, and he tickled the palm of his hand with the tip of his skinning knife. I have no wish to do harm to anyone in this village yet, but I do not think they will stay thee. In a little while they will have much to think upon. He lifted his head and listened, and to shouting and trampling outside. So they have let Buldeo come home at last? He was sent out this morning to kill thee, Mesua cried. Didst thou meet him? Yes, I met him. He has a tale to tell, and while he is telling it, there is a time to do much. But first I must learn what they mean. Think where ye would go, and tell me when I come back. He bounded through the window and ran along again outside the wall of the village, till he came within earshot of the crowd round the peepal tree. Buldeo was lying on the ground, coughing and groaning, and everyone was asking him questions. His hair had fallen about his shoulders, His hands and legs were skinned from climbing up trees, and he could hardly speak. But he felt the importance of his position keenly. From time to time, he said something about devils and singing devils and magic enchantment, just to give the crowd a taste of what was coming. Then he called for water. "Bah," said Mowgli. "Chatter, chatter, talk, talk. Men are blood brothers of the Vanderlog. Now he must wash his mouth with water. Now he must blow smoke, and when all that is done, he has still his story to tell. They are very wise people, men. They will leave no one to guard Messua till their ears are stuffed with Buldeo's tails, and I grow as lazy as they." He shook himself and glided back to the hut. Just as he was at the window, he felt a touch on his foot. "Mother," said he, for he knew that tongue well, "what dost thou here?" "I heard my children singing through the woods, and I followed the one I loved best, little frog. I have a desire to see that woman who gave thee milk," said Mother Wolf, all wet with dew. "They have bound and mean to kill her. I have cut those ties, and she goes with her man through the jungle. I also will follow. I am old, but not yet toothless." Mother Wolf reared herself up on end and looked through the window into the dark of the hut. In a minute she dropped noiselessly, and all she said was, "I gave thee thy first milk." But Bagheera speaks truth. Man goes to man at the last. "Maybe," said Mowgli, with a very unpleasant look on his face. "But tonight I am very far from that trail. Wait here, but do not let her see." "Thou wast never afraid of me, little frog," said Mother Wolf, backing into the high grass and blotting herself out as she knew how. "And now," said Mowgli cheerfully, as he swung into the hut again, "they are all sitting round Buldeo, who is saying that which did not happen. When his talk is finished, they say they will assuredly come here with the red, with fire, and burn you both, and then—" "I have spoken to my man," said Messua. "Kanhiwara is 30 miles from here, but at Kinhiwara we must find the English." "And what pack are they?" said Mowgli. "I do not know. They be white, and it is said that they govern all the land and do not suffer people to burn or beat each other without witnesses. If we can get thither tonight, we live. Otherwise, we die." "Live then. No man passes the gate tonight. What does he do?" Messua's husband was on his hands and knees digging up the earth in one corner of the hut. "It is his little money," said Messua. "We can take nothing else." "Ah yes, the stuff that passes from hand to hand and never grows warmer. Do they need it outside this place also?" said Mowgli. The man stared angrily. "He is a fool and no devil," he muttered. "With the money I can buy a horse. We are too bruised to walk far, and the village will follow us in an hour." "I say they will not follow till I choose, but a horse is well thought of, for Messua is tired." Her husband stood up and knotted the last of the rupees into his waistcloth. Mowgli helped Messua through the window, and the cool night air revived her, but the jungle in the starlight looked very dark and terrible. "Ye know the trail to Kanhiwara?" Mowgli whispered. They nodded. "Good. Remember now not to be afraid, and there is no need to go quickly, only there may be some small singing in the jungle behind you and before. Think you we would have risked a night in the jungle through anything less than the fear of burning? It is better to be killed by beasts than by men," said Messua's husband. But Messua looked at Mowgli and smiled. "I say," Mowgli went on, just as though he were Baloo repeating an old jungle law for the 100th time to an inattentive cub. "I say that not a tooth in the jungle is bared against you. Not a foot in the jungle is lifted against you. Neither man nor beast shall stay you till you come within eye-shot of Kanhiwara. There will be a watch about you." He turned quickly to Messua, saying, "He does not believe, but thou wilt believe?" "Aye, surely, my son, man, ghost or wolf of the jungle, I believe. He will be afraid when he hears my people singing. Thou wilt know and understand. Go now and slowly, for there is no need of any haste. The gates are shut." Messua flung herself sobbing at Mowgli's feet, but he lifted her very quickly with a shiver. Then he hung about his neck and called him every name of blessing she could think of. But her husband looked enviously across his fields and said, "If we reach Kanhiwara and I get the ear of the English, I will bring such a lawsuit against the Brahmin and old Buldeo, and the others shall eat this village to the bone. They shall pay me twice over for my crops untilled and my buffaloes unfed. I will have a great justice." Mowgli laughed. "I do not know what justice is, but come thou back next rains and see what is left." They went off toward the jungle, and Mother Wolf leaped from her place of hiding. "Follow," said Mowgli, "and look to it that all the jungle knows these two are safe. Give tongue a little. I would call Bagheera." The long, low howl rose and fell, and Mowgli saw Messua's husband flinch and turn, half-minded to run back to the hut. "Go on," Mowgli shouted cheerfully. I said there might be singing. That call will follow up to Kanhiwara. It is the favor of the jungle." Messua urged her husband forward, and the darkness shut down on them and Mother Wolf as Bagheera rose up almost under Mowgli's feet, trembling with delight of the night that drives the jungle people wild. "I am ashamed of thy brethren," he said, purring. "What? Did they not sing sweetly to Buldeo?" said Mowgli. Too well, too well. They made even me forget my pride, and by the broken lock that freed me, I went singing through the jungle as though I were out wooing in the spring. Didst thou not hear us? I had other game afoot. Ask Buldeo if he liked the song. But where are the four? I do not wish one of the man-pack to leave the gates tonight." "What need of the four then?" said Bagheera, shifting from foot to foot, his eyes ablaze and purring louder than ever. That's what I get for pausing. Louder than ever. "I can hold them, little brother. Is it killing at last? The singing and the sight of the men climbing up the trees have made me very ready. Who is man that we should care for him? The naked brown digger, the hairless and toothless, the eater of earth. I have followed him all day. At noon, in the white sunlight, I herded him as the wolves herd buck. I am Bagheera, Bagheera, Bagheera. As I danced with my shadow, so I danced with those men. Look! The great panther leaped as a kitten leaps at a dead leaf, whirling overhead, struck left and right into the empty air that sung under the strokes, landed noiselessly and leaped again and again, while the half purr, half growl gathered head as steam rumbles in a boiler. I am Bagheera in the jungle in the night, and my strength is in me. Who shall stay my stroke? Man cub, with one blow of my paw, I could beat thy head flat as a dead frog in the summer. Strike then, said Mowgli, in the dialect of the village, not the talk of the jungle. And the human words brought Bagheera to a full stop. Flung back on his haunches that quivered under him, his head just at the level of Mowgli's. Once more Mowgli stared, as he had stared at the rebellious cubs, full into the beryl green eyes, till the red glare behind their green went out like the light of a lighthouse shut off 20 miles across the sea, till the eyes dropped and the big head with them dropped lower and lower, and the red rasp of a tongue grated on Mowgli's instep. Brother, 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 the boy whispered, stroking steadily and lightly from the neck along the heaving back. Be still, be still. It is the fault of the night and no fault of thine. It was the smells of the night, said Bagheera penitently. This air cries aloud to me, but how dost thou know? Of course the air round an Indian village is full of all kinds of smells, and to any creature who does nearly all of his thinking through his nose, smells are as maddening as music and drugs are to human beings. Mowgli gentled the panther for a few minutes longer, and he lay down like a cat before a fire, his paws tucked under his breast and his eyes half shut. Thou art of the jungle and not of the jungle, he said at last, and I am only a black panther, but I love thee, little brother. They are very long at their talk under the tree, Mowgli said without noticing his last sentence. Buldeo must have told many tales. They should come soon to drag the woman and her man out of the trap and put them into the red flower. They will find that trap sprung. Ho, ho! Nay, listen, said Bagheera. The fever is out of my blood now. Let them find me there. Few would leave their houses after meeting me. It is not the first time I have been in a cage, and I do not think they will tie me with cords. Be wise then, said Mowgli, laughing, for he was beginning to feel as reckless as the panther, who had glided into the hut. Pah, Bagheera puffed. This place is rank with man, but here is just such a bed as they gave me to lie upon in the king's cages at Udipur. Now I lie down. Mowgli heard the strings of the cot crack under the great brute's weight. By the broken lock that freed me, they will think they have caught big game. Come and sit beside me, little brother. We will give them good hunting together. No, I have another thought in my stomach. The man pack shall not know what share I have in the sport. Make thine own hunt. I do not wish to see them. Be it so, said Bagheera. Now they come. The conference under the purple peepul tree had been growing noisier and noisier. At the far end of the village, it broke in wild yells and a rush up the street of men and women waving clubs and bamboos and sickles and knives. Buldeo and the Brahmin were at the head of it, but the mob was close at their heels, and they cried, "The witch and the wizard! Let us see if hot coins will make them confess. Burn the hut over their heads. We will teach them to shelter wolf devils. Nay, beat them first. Torches! More torches! Buldeo, heat the gun barrels!" Here was some little difficulty with the catch of the door. It had been very firmly fastened, but the crowd tore it away bodily, and the light of the torches streamed into the room, where, stretched at full length on the bed, his paws crossed and lightly hung down over the end, black as the pit and terrible as the demon, was Bagheera. There was 1/2 minute of desperate silence as the front ranks of the crowd clawed and tore their way back from the threshold. And in that minute Bagheera raised his head and yawned, elaborately, carefully, and ostentatiously, as he would yawn when he wished to insult an equal. The fringed lips drew back and up, the red tongue curled, the lower jaw dropped and dropped, till you could see halfway down the hot gullet, and the gigantic dog teeth stood clear to the pit of the gums, till they rang together, upper and under, with the snick of steel-faced wards shooting home round the edges of a safe. Next minute, the street was empty. Bagheera had leaped back through the window and stood at Mowgli's side, while a yelling, screaming torrent scrambled and tumbled one over another in their panic haste to get to their huts. "They will not stir till the day comes," said Bagheera quietly. And now, the silence of the afternoon sleep seemed to have overtaken the village. But as they listened, they could hear the sound of heavy grain boxes being dragged over earthen floors and pushed against doors. Bagheera was quite right. The village would not stir until daylight. Mowgli sat still and thought, and his face grew darker and darker. "What have I done?" said Bagheera, at last, fawning. "Nothing but great good. Watch them now till the day. I sleep." Mowgli ran off into the jungle and dropped across a rock and slept the day round, and the night back again. When he waked, Bagheera was at his side, and there lay a newly killed buck at his feet. Bagheera watched curiously while Mowgli went to work with his skinning knife, ate and drank, and turned over with his chin in his hands. "The man and thy woman came safe within eye-shot of Khanhiwara," Bagheera said. "Thy mother sent the word back by Chil. They found a horse before midnight of the night they were freed, and went very quickly. Is not that well?" "That is well," said Mowgli. "And thy man-pack in the village did not stir till the sun was high this morning. Then they ate their food and ran back quickly to their houses." "Did they? By chance, did they see thee?" "It may have been. I was rolling in the dust before the gate at dawn, and I may have made also some small song to myself. Now, little brother, there is nothing more to do. Come hunting with me and Baloo. He has new hives that he wishes to show, and we all desire thee back again as of old. Take off that look, which makes even me afraid. The man and woman will not be put into the red flower, and all goes well in the jungle. It is not true. Let us forget the man pack. They shall be forgotten in a little while. Where does Hathi feed tonight? Where he chooses. Who can answer for the Silent One? But why? What is there Hathi can do which we cannot? Bid him and his 3 sons come here to me. But indeed and truly, little brother, it is not seemly to say, come and go to Hathi. Remember, he is master of the jungle. And before the man pack changed the look on their face, he taught thee a master word of the jungle. That is all one. I have a master word for him now. Bid him come to Mowgli, the frog, and if he does not hear at first, bid him come because of the sack of the fields of Bertpore. The sack of the fields of Bertpore, Bagheera repeated 2 or 3 times to make sure. I go. Hathi can be angry at the worst, and I would give a moon's hunting to hear a master word that compels the Silent One. He went away, leaving Mowgli stabbing furiously with his skinning knife into the earth. Mowgli had never seen human blood in his life before, till he had seen and, what meant much more to him, smelled Messua's blood on the thongs that bound her. And Messua had been kind to him, and so far as he knew anything about love, he loved Messua as completely as he hated the rest of mankind. But deeply as he loathed them, their talk, their cruelty, and their cowardice, not for anything the jungle had to offer could he bring himself to take a human life and have that terrible scent of blood back again in his nostrils. His plan was simpler but much more thorough, and he laughed to himself when he thought that it was one of old Buddeo's tales told under the peepul tree in the evening that had put the idea into his head. It was a master word, Bagheera whispered in his ear. They were feeding by the river, and they obeyed as though they were bullocks. Look, where they come now. Hathi and his 3 sons had appeared in their usual way, without a sound. The mud of the river was still fresh on their flanks, and Hathi was thoughtfully chewing the green stem of a young plantain tree that he had gouged up with his tusks. But every line in his vast body showed to Bagheera, who could see things when he came across them, that it was not the master of the jungle speaking to a man-cub, but one who was afraid coming before one who was not. His 3 sons rolled side by side behind their father. Mowgli hardly lifted his head as Hathi gave him good hunting. He kept swinging and rocking and shifting from one foot to another for a long time before he spoke. And when he opened his mouth, it was to Bagheera, not to the elephants. I will tell a tale that was told to me by a hunter he hunted today, said Mowgli. Missed the voice there, sorry. It concerns an elephant, old and wise, who fell into a trap, and the sharpened stake in the pit scarred him from a little above his heel to the crest of his shoulder, leaving a white mark. Mowgli threw out his hand, and as Hathi wheeled, the moonlight showed a long white scar on his slaty side, as though he had been struck with a red-hot whip. Men came to take him Men came to take him from the trap, Mowgli continued. But he broke his ropes, for he was strong, and he went away till his wound was healed. Then came he angry by night to the fields of those hunters. And I remember now that he had 3 sons. These things happened many, many rains ago and very far away among the fields of Burtpore. What came to those fields at the next reaping, Hathi? They were reaped by me and my 3 sons, said Hathi. And to the plowing that follows the reaping, said Mowgli. There was no plowing, said Hathi. And to the men that live by the green crops on the ground, said Mowgli. They went away. They went away. And to the huts in which the men slept, said Mowgli. We tore the roofs to pieces, and the jungle swallowed up the walls, said Hathi. And what more besides, said Mowgli. As much ground as I can walk over in 2 nights from the east to the west, and from the north to the south, as much as I can walk over in 3 nights, the jungle took. We let in the jungle upon 5 villages, and in those villages and in their lands, the grazing ground and the soft crop grounds, there is not one man today who gets his food from the ground. That was the sack of the fields of Burtpore, which I and my 3 sons did. And now I ask, Man Cub, how the news of it came to thee, said Hathi. A man told me, and now I see even Buldeo can speak truth. It was well done, Hathi with the white mark, but the second time it shall be done better, for the reason that there is a man to direct. Thou knowest the village of the Man Pack that cast me out? They are idle, senseless, and cruel. They play with their mouths, and they do not eat, and do not kill the weaker for food, but for sport. When they are full fed, they would throw their own breed into the red flower. This I have seen. It is not well that they should live here any more. I hate them. Kill, then, said the youngest of Hathi's 3 sons, picking up a tuft of grass, dusting it against his forelegs and throwing it away, while his little red eyes glanced furtively from side to side. What good are white bones to me? Mowgli answered furiously. Am I the cub of a wolf to play in the sun with a raw head? I have killed Shere Khan, and his hide rots on the council rock. But I do not know whether Shere Khan is gone and my stomach is still empty. Now I will take that which I can see and touch. Let in the jungle upon that village, Hathi. Bagheera shivered and cowered down. He could understand, if the worst came to the worst, a quick rush down the village street and a right and left blow into the crowd, or a crafty killing of men as they plowed in the twilight. But this scheme for deliberately blotting out an entire village from the eyes of the man and beast frightened him. Now he saw why Mowgli had sent for Hathi. No one but the long-lived elephant could plan and carry through such a war. Let him run as the men ran from the fields of Burtpore. I'm not sure whose voice that was. I think it's Mowgli still. Let them run as the men ran from the fields of Burtpore, till we have the rainwater for the only plow, and the noise of the rain on the thick leaves for the pattering of their spindles, till Bagheera and I lair in the house of the Brahmin, and the buck drink at the tank behind the temple. Let in the jungle, Hathi. But we have no quarrel with them, and it needs the red rage of great pain, ere we tear down the places where men sleep, said Hathi, rocking doubtfully. Are ye the only eaters of grass in the jungle? Drive in your peoples. Let the deer and the pig and the nilgahi look to it. Ye need never show a hand's breadth of hide till the fields are naked. Let in the jungle, Hathi. There will be no killing. My tusks were red at the sack of the fields of Burtpore, and I would not wake that smell again. Nor I. I do not wish even their bones to lie on our clean earth. Let them go find a fresh lair. They cannot stay here. I have seen and smelt the blood of the woman that gave me food. The woman who they would have killed but for me. Only the smell of the new grass on their doorsteps can take away that smell. It burns in my mouth. Let in the jungle, Hathi. Ah, said Hathi. So did the scar of the stake burn on my hide till we watched their villages die under the spring growth. Now I see thy war shall be our war. We will let in the jungle. Mowgli had hardly time to catch his breath. He was shaking all over with rage and hate before the place where the elephants had stood was empty, and Bagheera was looking at him with terror. By the broken lock that freed me, said the Black Panther at last, art thou the naked thing I spoke for in the pack when all was young? Master of the jungle, when my strength goes, speak for me. Speak for Baloo, speak for all us. We are cubs before thee, snapped twigs underfoot, fawns that have lost their doe. The idea of Bagheera being a stray fawn upset Mowgli altogether, and he laughed and caught his breath and sobbed and laughed again, till he had to jump into a pool to make himself stop. Then he swam round and round, ducking in and out of the bars of the moonlight like the frog, his namesake. By this time Hathi and his 3 sons had turned, each to one point of the compass, and were striding silently down the valleys a mile away. They went on and on for 2 days' march. That is to say, a long 60 miles through the jungle, while every step they took and every wave of their trunks was known and noted and talked over by Mang and Chil and the monkey people and all the birds. Then they began to feed and fed quietly for a week or so. Hathi and his sons are like Kaa, the rock python. They never hurry till they have to. At the end of that time, and none knew who had started it, a rumor went through the jungle that there was better food and water to be found in such and such a valley. The pig who, of course, will go to the ends of the earth for a full meal, moved first by companies, scuffling over the rocks, and the deer followed, with the little foxes that live on the dead and dying of the herds, and the heavy-shouldered nilgahi moved parallel with the deer, and the wild buffaloes of the swamps came after the nilgahi. The least little thing would have turned and scattered, straggling droves that grazed and sauntered and drank and grazed again. But whatever there was, whenever there was an alarm, someone would rise up and soothe them. At one time it would be Sahi, the porcupine, full of news of good feed just a little farther on. At another, Mang would cry cheerily and flap down a glade to show it was all empty. Or Baloo, his mouth full of roots, would shamble alongside a wavering line and half frighten, half romp it clumsily back to the proper road. Very many creatures broke back or ran away or lost interest, but very many were left to go forward. At the end of another 10 days or so, the situation was this. The deer and the pig and the nilgahi were milling round and round in a circle of 8 or 10 miles radius, while the eaters of flesh skirmished round its edge. And the center of that circle was the village, and round the village the crops were ripening, and in the crops sat men on what they called machans, platforms like pigeon perches made of sticks at the top of 4 poles to scare away birds and other stealers. Then the deer were coaxed no more. The eaters of the flesh were close behind them and forced them forward and inward. It was a dark night when Hathi and his 3 sons slipped down from the jungle and broke off the poles of the machans with their trunks, and they fell as a snapped stalk of hemlock in bloom falls. And the men that tumbled from them heard the deep gurgling of the elephants in their ears. Then the vanguard of the bewildered armies of the deer broke down and flooded into the village grazing grounds and the plowed fields, and the sharp-hoofed, rooting wild pigs came with them. And what the deer left, the pigs spoiled. And from time to time an alarm of wolves would shake the herds, and they would rush to and fro desperately, treading down the young barley and cutting flat the banks of the irrigating channels. Before the dawn broke, the pressure on the outside of the circle gave way at one point. The eaters of flesh had fallen back and left an open path to the south, and drove upon drove of buck fled along it. Others, who were bolder, lay up in the thickets to finish their meal next night. But the work was practically done. When the villagers looked in the morning, they saw their crops were lost. That meant death if they did not get away, for they lived year in and year out as near to starvation as the jungle was near to them. When the buffaloes were sent to graze, the hungry brutes found that the deer had cleared the grazing grounds, and so wandered into the jungle and drifted off with their wild mates. And when twilight fell, the 3 or 4 ponies that belonged to the village lay in their stables with their heads beaten in. Only Bagheera could have given those strokes, and only Bagheera would have thought of insolently dragging the last carcass to the open street. The villagers had no heart to make fires in the fields that night. So Hathi and his 3 sons went gleaning among what was left. And where Hathi gleans, there is no need to follow. The men decided to live on their stored seed corn until the rains had fallen, and then to take work as servants till they could catch up with the lost year. But as the grain dealer was thinking of his well-filled crates of corn and the prices he would levy at the sale of it, Hathi's sharp tusks were picking out the corner of his mud house and smashing up the big wicker chest, leaped with cow dung, where the precious stuff lay. When that last loss was discovered, it was Brahman's turn to speak. He had prayed to his own gods without answer. It might be, he said, that unconsciously the village had offended someone of the gods of the jungle. For beyond doubt, the jungle was against them. So they sent for the head man of the nearest tribe of wandering Gonds, little, wise, and very black hunters living in the deep jungle, whose fathers came of the oldest race in India, the aboriginal owners of the land. They made the Gond welcome with what they had, and he stood on one leg, his bow in his hand, and 2 or 3 poisoned arrows stuck through his topknot, looking half afraid and half contemptuously at the anxious villagers and their ruined fields. They wished to know whether his gods, the old gods, were angry with them, and what sacrifices should be offered. The Gond said nothing, but picked up a trail of the Karela, the vine that bears the bitter wild gourd, and laced it to and fro across the temple door in the face of the staring red Hindu image. Then he pushed with his hand in the open air along the road to Kanhiwara and went back to his jungle and watched the jungle people drifting through it. He knew that when the jungle moves, only white men can hope to turn it aside. There was no need to ask his meaning. The wild gourd would grow where they had worshipped their god, and the sooner they saved themselves, the better. But it is hard to tear a village from its moorings. They stayed on as long as any summer food was left to them, and they tried to gather nuts in the jungle, but shadows with glaring eyes watched them and rolled before them even at midday. And when they ran back afraid to their walls, on the tree trunks they had passed not 5 minutes before, the bark would be stripped and chiseled with the stroke of some great taloned paw. The more they kept to their village, the bolder grew the wild things that gamboled and bellowed on the grazing grounds by the Waingunga. They had no heart to patch the plaster and the rear walls of the empty byres that backed on to the jungle. The wild pig trampled them down, and the knotty-rooted vines hurried after and threw their elbows over the new-won ground. And the coarse grass bristled behind the vines. The unmarried men ran away first and carried the news far and near that the village was doomed. Who could fight, they said, against the jungle or the gods of the jungle, when the very village cobra had left his hole in the platform under the people? So their little commerce with the outside world shrunk as the trodden paths across the open grew fewer and fainter, and the nightly trumpetings of Hathi and his 3 sons ceased to trouble them. They had no more to go. The crop on the ground and the seed in the ground had been taken. The outlying fields were already losing their shape, and it was time to throw themselves on the charity of the English at Kanhiwara. Native fashion, they delayed their departure from one day to another till the first rains caught them and unmended roofs let in a flood. And the grazing grounds stood ankle deep, and all green things came on with a rush after the heat of the summer. Then they waded out, men, women, and children, through the blinding hot rain of the morning, but turned naturally for one farewell look at their homes. They heard, as the last burdened family filed through the gate, a crashing of falling beams and thatch behind the walls. They saw a shiny, snaky black trunk lifted for an instant, scattering sodden thatch. It disappeared, and there was another crash, followed by a squeal. Hathi had been plucking off the roofs of the huts as you pluck water lilies, and a rebounding beam had pricked him. He needed only this to unchain his full strength, for of all things in the jungle the wild elephant enraged is the most wantonly destructive. He kicked backward at a mud wall that crumpled at the stroke, and crumbling melted to yellow mud under the torrent of rain. Then he wheeled and squealed and tore through the narrow streets, leaning against the huts right and left, shivering the crazy doors and crumpling up the eaves, while his 3 sons raged behind as they raged at the sack of the fields of Bhurtpore. "The jungle will swallow these shells," said a quiet voice in the wreckage. "It is the outer walls that must lie down." And Mowgli, with the rain sluicing over his bare shoulders and arms, leaped back from a wall that was settling like a tired buffalo. "All in good time," panted Hathi. "Oh, but my tusks were red at Bhurtpore. To the outer wall, children, with the head together now!" The 4 pushed side by side. The outer wall bulged, split, and fell, and the villagers, dumb with horror, saw the savage, clay-streaked heads of the wreckers in the ragged gap. Then they fled, houseless and foodless, down the valley as their village, shredded and tossed and trampled, melted behind them. A month later, the place was a dimpled mound, covered with soft, green young stuff. And by the end of the rains, there was the roaring jungle in full blast on the spot that had been under plow not 6 months before. Mowgli's Song Against People. I'm going to just read this instead of singing it so as to not lose the temper of that last chapter. "I will let loose against you the fleet-footed vines. I will call in the jungle to stamp out your lines. The roofs shall fade before it. The house beams shall fall. And the Karela, the bitter Karela, shall cover it all. In the gates of these your councils, my people shall sing. In the doors of these your garners, the batfolk shall cling. And the snake shall be your watchman. By the hearthstone unswept. For the Karela, the bitter Karela, shall fruit where ye slept. Ye shall not see my strikers, ye shall hear them and guess. By night before the moonrise I will send for my cess, and the wolf shall be your herdsman by a landmark removed. For the Karela, the bitter Karela, shall see where ye loved. I will reap your fields before you at the hands of a host. Ye shall glean behind my reapers for the bread that is lost. And the deer shall be your oxen by a headland untilled, for the Karela, the bitter Karela, shall leaf where ye build. I have untied against you the club-footed vines. I have sent in the jungle to swamp out your lines. The trees are on you. The house beams shall fall, and the Karela, the bitter Karela, shall cover you all.